Hello, it's Dave again, and I thought I'd provide you with a bit of a personal summary, some personal thoughts about some of the themes, trends, issues that we've been alluding to during the module so far. Hope you find it interesting. Okay, so what are we trying to do? I suppose we're trying to summarise the module and look forward and look at the emerging trends and themes within HRM. A chance for you to do this as well, perhaps even to share your thoughts on Blackboard as we've been doing over recent weeks. If you want to do that, just think about the work we've been doing on the module. What two key issues would you see as having the biggest impact on your roles over, say, the next 5 years? See what you think. What about me? What do I think? Well, there are some issues emerging as we start thinking about the present and the future. But there's obviously no one response to this question. But maybe you can identify as the key one is the fact that this thing called work is changing so fast. And the way it changes affects every aspect of staff management. How do we find staff? How do we hang on to them? How do we get the best out of them fairly? Perhaps one of the ways of doing that is to shift away from managership towards leadership, whatever that means. And perhaps we're going to be focusing more and more on self-development and less on training as the years progress. What about the future then? What does it look like? Let's do a bit of crystal ball gazing. Don't forget though, trying to predict the future is a bit like trying to drive down a country road at night with no lights whilst looking out the back window. Peter Drucker, a famous management guru came up with that lovely quote. One of the prevailing forces looking ahead, Linda Grattan reckons that by 2025 these are going to be the forces we're going to have to contend with. And an obvious one is technology. 5 billion people are going to be connected by mobile devices, phones, tablets, laptops, computers and so on. We're going to store things on the cloud rather than on our hard drives. Everything's going to be paperless. It's the only way to cope with the increasing levels of knowledge and information that there is floating around. Globalization is going to continue as a theme, with emerging economies such as the BRIC countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, closely followed by Mexico and Korea, and there's others waiting in the wings as well, Egypt, Nigeria, Turkey, all of which is going to involve us in a greater recruitment market, a global recruitment market, with a lot more competition as well. Demographic changes we've alluded to. Generation Z is going to overtake Generation Y, and they are going to be far longer lived. They're going to choose when they work as well. Societies are changing. We know about language changes, high levels of literacy, urbanisation. The workforce is changing with more women, more freelancers, far more individualistic nature. And let's not forget about global warming. Alternative transports, alternatives to commuting are going to be increasingly important. Donkin identifies some influences thinking about the future of work and workers. He talks about the net generation as opposed to next generation. Everything that we do is going to be measured, targeted. We're going to have a far greater interest in our health as well, so high levels of health screening. Demographics are changing. We've talked about populations are migrating within countries and between countries. Communication technology is rapidly changing. We know about everything is also being increasingly commoditized. Everything is for sale, including my knowledge and perhaps even my loyalty. Globalization, women in work and networking, key things that we've discussed several times. What does this mean in terms of organisations and what they are going to look like? Again, Grattan reckons that this will require far greater levels of authentic leadership and transparent leadership. We're going to be working in virtual teams, just got used to perhaps working in physical teams. We're going to be developing cross-business networks and relationships with partners, with consumers, with entrepreneurs. and this notion of flexibility is going to keep rearing its head constantly. The McKinsey organisation, who are a set of management consultants, American, they've identified some key trends which they think will impact upon the future of work. Technology is an obvious one, where all jobs are different, far more complex, far fewer routines. But they reckon also there'll be some mismatches between where skills are available and what jobs are available. So people are going to constantly be retraining, greater demand for tertiary education, adult education. There'll be a geographic mismatches, they reckon, as well, between where jobs are and where workers are. Hence the need for a lot more virtual mobility. They've identified some untapped pools of talent as well, younger people and older people, and we've seen evidence of the way the labour market is changing, with more women and more ethnic minorities entering the labour market. But they also reckon there'll continue to be a disparity between the rich and the poor. In fact, they think it's going to get wider, nationally and globally. So what does this mean about workers of tomorrow and what they're going to look like, or even what we're going to look like? Bolia in 2011, his view were that we're going to have to be continuous learners, constantly changing what we do and therefore what we need to know in order to do it. Constantly on the edge, hyperactive, driven, according to Spradlin. We're going to have part-time jobs, lots of them though, multiple jobs rather than a single job. So that means we probably won't display loyalty to a single employer. If we display loyalty at all, it might be to social activities or charitable campaigns. We'll have a set of skills, but are likely to be far more specialised. And we're going to make use of what it refers to as swarm workers, where we just tell people we've got a problem and everybody's going to jump in to solve it. And that will be virtually organised rather than physically organised. Work is going to be knowledge based, and workers therefore are going to have to embrace change, not just cope with change, but embrace it, welcome it. And in terms of careers, we're going to have to manage our own. Don't sit back and wait for other people to provide career management. So what does all this mean in terms of looking forward? Some of Dave's thoughts about the future? Well, we can look at it very optimistically. More automation means more leisure time, doesn't it? And high levels of knowledge gives me high levels of power. Knowledge is power, after all. Everything is going to have to be far more flexible, but that means my employer is as well. And work is going to be what I do, not a place where I go. So it's going to be fun, isn't it? Changing, variety, informal, far more spontaneous, participative, enriched even. So the only thing that's static is the fact that we're changing. Yeah, very optimistic. Or is it? I can also put on a pessimistic hat and see that the digital divide between first world, second world, or even the third world is going to get wider. The work we do is going to be far more controlled by the computer, so we're going to be not in dark satanic mills, as in the old hymn in Jerusalem, but dark satanic offices or call centres or classrooms where the computer says no. The computer's going to be looking at what we do all the time. We're going to have the sort of the Big Brother or the BlackBerry surveillance. Your hours of work are going to be whenever I tell you to work. But at the same time, you won't have any job security. So work is going to be disorganised, chaotic, inconsistent, maybe conflictual. A little bit more pessimistic there. For HRM, what does this mean then? It probably means there's going to be a bigger role for line managers, you guys, after your MBA. High levels of flexibility are going to be expected and demanded. We're going to be treated far more as individuals, not as one of a bunch, one of a group. We're going to be required and expected to take bigger risks. We've seen work and workers are going to be far more diverse. We're going to have global competition, far more of it, and perhaps also an increasing interest in corporate social responsibility, doing things because it's the right thing to do. But maybe also decreasing levels of security or trade union pressure. Maybe lower skill levels, lower levels of uniformity, higher individualisation in other words. Lower levels of ownership of knowledge. I'm going to find ways of tapping into your knowledge and sharing it with others. And lower levels of reliance on Generation X, people like me. Practically, well, probably means we're going to have to take greater care in how we select staff. Far more emphasis on attitudes, far less emphasis on knowledge or skills. Far more emphasis on learning, not on training. We're going to be involved increasingly in performance management systems, total systems, not just the appraisal scheme. We're going to have to continuously find new ways of giving people a chance to voice their views, up, down and sideways. Constantly be finding out what is expected from the manager and the managed, and changing psychological contracts. Finding new ways of employing staff, not just the traditional full and part-time work, but long-term, short-term, 0 hours, contract work. And all of that is going to result in very, very different forms of careers. The career is going to be more than a job, but we're all probably going to be changing careers several times during our lifetime of work. We'll probably also be working in different types of jobs, not ones which are closely controlled by the boss looking over your shoulder, but jobs which are controlled by results. Not what you do, but what have you done. We're going to need to develop knowledge management systems and processes to identify issues like know who, know how, know what. Work-life balance is going to be changing. Increasingly Generation Y and Generation Z are going to be saying, look, I work to live, not I live to work. Managing that is going to be different. One of the ways of managing might be through more levels of influence of emotional intelligence, emotional competence. Understanding and managing emotions, managing through those rather than managing through command and control processes. And what are we going to be offering in return? Probably focus is going to be on employability rather than employment. Gone are the days of lifetime employment. So that's my view, and I thought I'd leave you with a couple of reflective questions for you to think about. What about your own career? How is that likely to be impacted by some of the changes we talked about? What aspirations do you have for your own career? What do you think you're going to need to develop in order to achieve them? And of course, what are your plans to achieve them? Perhaps keep these in mind as you develop through the rest of the MBA programme, the other modules. Food for thought. Hope you found it interesting. I'll see you soon elsewhere in the programme. Bye for now.